This is the DRF Players Podcast.
Hello and welcome to the DRF Players Podcast. This is show 235, May the 4th, 2017, Star Wars Day, but more importantly, Kentucky Derby edition of this year's podcast. It's finally here. We have horses, they've drawn, we have morning lines, we have post positions, we have an incredible looking card full of exciting races, many of which would be the highlight of plenty of racing days, and they're just an undercard on for the big bout, the 2017 Kentucky Derby, coming to you from the Brooklyn Bunker. I'm not sure that I'm going to be emerging from the Brooklyn Bunker until Saturday afternoon at this point. I'm your host, Peter Thomas Fornatal, back with you, joined as ever, coming to you from, I'm assuming you were out at Churchill Downs this morning, and currently at an undisclosed location in Louisville. He is the people's champion, Jonathan Kinchin. What's up, JK?
Oh, it's I don't want to melt. It's a little bit damp out there, so I'm going to keep my shoes clean and save them for Friday. I'll be participating from home today, saving myself for what is a pretty big marathon these next 2 days.
Melt? Have you just revealed the secret of your handicapping contest success? You're some sort of warlock who has to stay out of the water. Are you made of sugar? What's the problem here?
No, the freshness of my shoes always has to be protected.
I've seen some impressive examples of the shoes. Will you be breaking out the capri pants to go along with them this time?
They're not capri pants. I just throw a tight little roll at the bottom of them because it's a shame to cover up fresh shoes. So you want to make sure that everyone can see the full freshness.
I understand.
You have to throw a quick little roll on the bottom just to reveal them.
I know this is only a semi-serious question. I know you're a big believer in, traveling in style, dressing in style. Is there some way in which this actually factors into your mindset on a big racing day in a positive way, or is it just something we like to joke about on the podcast?
No, in sports, when I was coaching and also in life and whatever, I believe in the phrase "look good, play good."
I like it, and you have lived up to that, and hopefully you will this weekend. I find that interesting. So despite all we joked the other day, we don't need to beat it to death, but we, had the big conversation about Thurby and Churchill trying to make this, understandably, sort of the next big day during Derby week, attract a lot of local players, et cetera, et cetera. The marketing didn't win you over. You're sitting in your pajamas in front of your computer all day. Did I get that right?
Well, I was lucky enough to get out there for a little bit yesterday to kind of quench the pre-Derby thirst, and so with the weather being the way that it's planning on being today, with the mounds of work and the 14 race cards that we have to dive into the next couple of days, I figured that my time would be better spent away from the track today, especially considering the weather. If it was going to be 75, then I'd say to hell with the work and I'd be out there, but I can skip a day in these conditions.
Let's talk about the weather, and I'm sure one of the main questions that people listening have is, what effect is it going to have on your handicapping for Friday and Saturday? But before we get to the specifics of how the weather is going to affect you, just tell us what's going on down there exactly, and what does the forecast look like for the next 48 to 72 hours?
This morning it was just kind of like an annoying rain where like you could stand in it and you wouldn't be really mad about it. And it wasn't anything like over the top intense. There's storms that are coming in from some radar things I've seen, but it looks like there's a chance that it could just kind of scatter Churchill and kind of keep going north. I go to weather.gov, which was a wise guy trip someone taught me a long time ago, not weather.com, which weather.gov is the National Weather Service. It says like Friday, there's possibly going to be a tenth of an inch of rain scattered throughout the day. And then on Saturday, it says 40% chance of rain with a high of 65, which makes me think that there's a chance that this thing might not get as drastic and dramatic as everyone is kind of talking about. So that's what I'm hopeful for.
That would be very nice. And in terms of, are you looking with an extra eye? When we went through yesterday talking with Craig Bernick, if folks haven't had a chance, there's still plenty of time to listen to the Oaks Day show before the Oaks Day card. We were looking a little bit, not particularly successfully, but looking a little bit for going breeding in the turf races. Are you going to be doing that again with these turf races on the Derby Day card?
Yeah, I mean, I think that in general, when it comes to off tracks, whether it be the main track or on the grass, I just handicap the race normally and wait to see what happens the day of. I think that you can sometimes fall in love with situations because you think the surface is going to be a certain way. I'd rather evaluate the horses on their merits and then make final decisions once I see scratches and once I see the actual condition of the racetrack. And so I usually go from there, but it doesn't typically influence me, to be honest with you. I'm not as fluent, I guess, in horse anatomy that I can like identify what hooves are going to excel in an off track or a off grass situation. So I just handicap the horses, and I typically want horses that are going to be forwardly placed and off on the main track and off going because of the kickback. That's kind of my it's raining handicapping shortcut. So,
but that's what you do anyway, more or less. I mean, not to,
right.
It's such a weapon on the dirt. It doesn't sound.
Yeah, I mean, you've pretty much nailed it. Like the roundabout way is I don't really care. It doesn't really change what I'm going to do. The only thing that I will say that it does is I'm more likely to include a horse that I feel could be senseless because of the off chance that they just love the going, and you can get a pretty good value. But other than that, it's pretty much the same for me either way. Spreading
a little bit more, that makes sense. I think you sort of subtly alluded to the idea of how bias can come into play on an off track very often. It'll just accentuate the sort of normal speed bias in American racing, part of that being the kickback. There are certain situations where water will pool at the down toward the rail, and you'll end up with a bad rail situation on a wet track day. I assume that's the kind of thing you're just going to be paying attention to throughout the undercard to see if it's going to have any effect on the way you're playing the races that day.
Yeah, I think that's just any day, though. You have. I think that even if you don't plan on betting early races, like for instance, I won't be at Churchill on Friday and Saturday for the first, second, third, fourth. However, I'm going to look over those races and I'm going to watch those races because you cannot identify a bias without handicapping a race.
Yeah.
The people that think they understand how bias works and they say, oh, that horse went wire to wire, speed's going to be good. Well, the horse was 1-5, and the other horses behind him had 3 legs, like he was supposed to wire them. So if you don't handicap the race, you can't make that evaluation properly. And so, regardless of the surface, that's something that I would definitely do is handicap early, evaluate so that you can understand how the track is playing.
I like it. I like that all. We had one general question. I realize all the other questions we were asking, there were a ton of them, but I think we're going to cover them naturally if we have time to do a quick look through the entire Derby field, maybe just a sentence or two once we get to that point. But there was a question about using the morning line in one's handicapping and whether or not we prefer to handicap with the morning lines installed, or whether we prefer to look at just the blank paper. How do you respond to that? I saw you answered on Twitter, but it seemed like a question that might require more than 140.
Yeah, so here's the thing. When I first started handicapping, seriously, I used to like not having the morning line because I felt like the morning line would influence me. I feel like you have a tendency to see a 20-1 shot, look, trouble, no trouble, move on. You look really quickly just to see, is there a reason that I should like this horse that's going to jump out of the page? And if not, I'm going to skip it. So I think that sometimes the morning line can influence you in that way. But I also think that sometimes without having the morning line, and it still happens to me now, where I will fall in love with a horse who happens to turn out to be a 20-1 morning line. And then when I look at the fact that it's 20-1, I realize that all the reasons I was liking him weren't enough to get him home in this race. So it actually has protected me because it's made me look again. So I understand if someone wants to handicap without it, but I also think that it does have some weight and can kind of help guide you because of it can kind of clear some things up for you. So, I wouldn't be opposed to someone saying, I'm handicapped I'm never using the morning line. Cool. Good for you. That's fine. And that could be great. And, but I kind of like a mixture of both.
Yeah, I get it. And there's something nice about having an idea of horses who are, like, quote unquote, supposed to be bet, both in looking at the race initially and then when it comes time to make your wagering decisions. I want to know, especially in a race with younger horses, it's always interesting to see the ones who are bet down below their morning line, or ones, and just as interesting to see horses who are supposed to be bet. There's a leading trainer involved, a leading jockey involved, and yet they're, a tepid 7-2 when they're supposed to be 2-1. That's good information to have as well. That might indicate that that horse is not so well meant that day, or not necessarily not well meant, but not going to fire his or her best shot. So I think there are benefits to doing it both ways, like with so many things in handicapping. You find out what works for you. And now let's find out what works for us when it comes to these stakes on the Churchill Downs undercard. Why don't we start off with the 6th race? Are you going to get there? Will this be the first race you're there for on Saturday, or do you try to get there for the 5th?
Well, because it wouldn't be a podcast without me mentioning the pick 3 that one day.
I thought you were going to wait until we got to Divisadero for that, but that's okay.
No, the stress of sprinting in through that, trying to get through the traffic and to get in to make a bet, if you want to bet the first race, through all those people, through all that traffic, through all those lines and all of those rookie tellers, it's not something that I enjoy doing, and it's not something I plan on doing is very often. So I'll try to be there a little bit before that.
You did a great 20 minutes. It was one of the shows last week. We did about 20 minutes on your advice for Derby. Oh, I had a good one. A female listener chimed in with this one as sort of an addendum to that, and I'll pass that along to our female listeners and anyone who will be traveling with somebody who's going to be wearing high heels. I guess they don't even necessarily have to be female, but just anyone who's planning on wearing high heels that day. Flip-flops in the purse, I've heard, is another excellent wise guy hack to get through some of the extra walking that one has to do, especially when it comes time to leave Churchill Downs on Derby Day. So I wanted to throw that along. But we also had a question very specifically about the betting piece of the equation on Derby Day. How do you deal with those lines? Are you basically making all your bets at once? Are you going to place the bet the minute a race goes off? Is there any wise guy stuff you can do to make betting a little bit easier on Derby Day?
Yeah, the best thing to do is if you're on the first level, the first floor, it's just tough, right? Because it's just a hard thing to do. So, there's really not a lot you can do in that situation. But most sections will have a $50 or $100 minimum window, even if you're not betting that much. Go there, start the day with bet $100 a show on a sure thing early. Tip the guy $20, and he'll never kick you out of the line for the rest of the day.
Fantastic! Oh, I can't believe that didn't get in our Derby Day show the other week. That's really good stuff. Excellent. And then so that's your move. I would just say, generally speaking, as far out in advance as you can plan things, that's when you're going to want to try to get the bets down. Just take out one of the things that can go wrong. All right, that was a nice little tangent. Let's get back to the first of these graded stakes. Of course, Humana Distaff Grade 1, 7 furlongs. Do we think, what are you hearing, Jonathan? Is Finest City going to go here, or is she running tomorrow?
She is running in this spot. She's not running tomorrow.
Okay.
She will be running in the Humana Distaff. So, with that said, it changes the complexion a little bit, but I don't think all it does is give me a better price on the horse I was going to take either way, which is the horse that I said would not lose a race at one turn, and she tried really hard to not do that, except for the Ballerina, where she got a silly ride by Joel. And in the Breeders' Cup Filly Mare Sprint, where I singled her in a pick 6 that I went 5 of 6 in. So, look, I think she's sharp. I think she's an unbelievable sprinter. I think that this trip is going to be right where she wants to be. She's run well over this track. Paula Silverlining, the race wasn't that fast in the Madison. Obviously, she can improve for Chad Brown's second time. But I'm going to stick to Karina Mina, drawn outside. Hopefully she breaks well. She'll be able to see everything going on inside of her. And like I said, I think she's probably the best female sprinter in the country.
So you were talking about, obviously, number 7, Karina Mia, as your selection. I'll go with her as well, remembering how impressive she was this weekend last year, right? Was that sort of her coming out party? And I guess she wasn't her coming out party. She looked good before, but boy, that was a nice race in the 8 bells where she did not break, maybe even took a little bump, and I thought we'd done our money. We had a little bet between ourselves, you, me, and podcast host emeritus Mike Hogan that day, and Karina Mia ended up getting the job done for us. She's put in some races along the way that have been that have made us wonder about whether we were right or wrong about her. But the other thing I like is just the way that the Mott Barn appears to be heating up at the right time. And this is a topic I bet we'll come back to a little bit later in the show when we get to some of these other races. Cold, very cold by his lofty standards at Keeneland. Has started off Churchill with a bang. I got to figure if she's in this spot, she's ready to show her good stuff. And the draw should work out. And hopefully she gets the job done, though it's certainly not going to be easy with some of the quality fillies against her. But yeah, Karina Mia is a double pick for us, number 7 in the Humana Distaff. Let's move on to the Churchill Downs, Grade 2. Here, we talk about the word literally on this show a lot. I've got a good usage of it here for you. Literally, masochistic returns to the scene of the crime. For listeners who might not know what I'm talking about, JK, you want to fill in the backstory?
Yeah, but I do want to fill it in. But isn't masochistic like later? He's in the 10th.
Oh, I skipped ahead. I had my pages out of order here.
Yeah, you skipped like 4
I skipped 4
races.
races.
I thought you just didn't want to play the other ones.
No. We're gonna go back to them. But since I already did that whole preamble, we're gonna go out of order here, and we'll do if it's okay with you, we'll do the Churchill Downs.
Yes, he is back to the scene of the crime. Well, so I want to make sure I don't know the exact breakdown of what happened, but essentially, some funny business took place at Santa Anita in a maiden race when Masochistic was still a maiden. The jockey's effort in the race seemed a little questionable, and some tests after the race showed some substances, traces, or at least some point of substances that would potentially, allegedly.
Well, no, suspensions were given here. That's why I have no problem talking. Sometimes we're a little circumspect when it comes to this stuff, but in this case, yeah, there was definitely a drug situation where the horse was not allowed to produce his all. I don't even think that it was a jockey deal. It was more the horse was.
Well, watch the replay. You guys can be your own judge.
It was both.
I don't think he was trying very hard. Yeah, it's actually kind of a laughable replay to watch.
Oh,
He's
excellent!
Like standing up in the irons the entire time.
Oh, the dark side of the game. Anyway, they shipped to Churchill Downs. It was on Derby Day, right, in a maiden race, and the horse runs off the screen. Day,
in 2014, at 2-1, the horse won by 14 lengths. And yeah,
here's the good news.
Made some money that day. It wasn't me.
Yeah, here's the good news. The situation was dealt with. I mean, maybe not as strictly as it should have been. Horse is in different hands now. Has gone on to prove that he's an immense talent. Great looking horse. A lot of fun to get to see him in the flesh, and has really developed. Is this spot? Is he going to show his stuff in this spot here, JK?
I would think so. I mean, look, I think he's a talented horse. Here's the problem. I'm not sure he's as good going 7 as he is going 6. But it's tricky. I'm not going to play him in this spot. I'm sure he might have a chance to run well, but I'm going to look elsewhere, and I'm going to look for Limousine Liberal, who I was hopeful was going to run on tournament day at Keeneland, but he scratched the morning of. I thought he was in the bad part of the track, which is also the reason I'm kind of against Awesome Slew, who I thought was on the good part of the track that day. Limousine Liberal was always trained well in Kentucky. He's been working well at Keeneland, and you get Jose Ortiz, who I've started to really fall in love with him as a rider. I feel like he always has the horses that I've played in the right spot, and I would imagine that's because he's a forward type of rider, and those are typically the type of horses I find myself on. So I'm going to give Limousine Liberal another shot in here, and hope that he can turn the tables on Awesome Slew, who I think is a quality horse, but drawn down inside on.
We lost JK there for a second, talking about the Churchill Downs handicap and his selection, who's Limousine Liberal. I'm going to go with number 2, Masochistic, in there. And now we'll go back to dealing with these races in the right order while we hope that JK can join us again. I might just try to reinitiate the Skype call with him and see if we can get it going that way. But meanwhile, we'll move it along back to where we should have been in time, which is to the Distaff Turf Mile, which sees the return to the races of one of my favorites, and that's Miss Temple City. This filly has just been tremendous throughout her career. Many achievements, including pretty darn good form when it comes to her races at Royal Ascot. Got the job done at the Grade 1 level again last time at the Matriarch at Del Mar, and facing a talented field here. But it looks to me like with the trip she's going to get, she has an opportunity to get the jump on some of her main competition. Now, I'm sure Chad Brown will have other ideas with number 6, Roca Rojo. But I'm hoping that Miss Temple City once again gets the job done, and then heads over to Royal Ascot, where I have half a mind to attempt to go this year, and have an opportunity to go to that meet, because it's been a few years since I've had the opportunity. Royal Ascot's another one of those meetings where I highly recommend all racing fans put that on their bucket list. JK, did we get you back there?
I'm back. I don't know what happened there. It was the Derby gods, or someone got mad at me for saying something bad about Masochistic. So, I don't know where you lost me, but I'll just wrap it up quick. Limousine Liberal.
Yeah.
I just don't feel like Awesome Slew's going to turn the table.
No, we got the whole thing. We dropped it right at the end. Let's move it right along. I just rolled through my thoughts on the Distaff Turf Mile, where I am selecting my old friend Miss Temple City. Who do you like in there?
You know what? You are a little bit of a Miss Temple City fanboy. I think if they sold T-shirts, you would buy one.
Oh, definitely. Are you kidding? Especially after she wins
are.
at Royal Ascot this year, man. I'm going to be. I might get the trademark. I'm going to talk to Freddie Moe. We're going to get the Miss Temple City T-shirts going.
You know, this is a tricky. It's an exciting race, right? I mean, I think that most people are kind of pitting it the Miss Temple City versus Roca Rojo show, and I can get into that. For some reason, I keep kind of getting drawn to Harmonize. You know, I think that Harmonize is a filly that has always shown a lot of talent, and a lot of her races have kind of taken place at, 8.5 furlongs, 9 furlongs, 10 furlongs, 9 furlongs, 9 furlongs. In the last race, she had a chance at Santa Anita to run at a flat mile on a firm surface, and now she's back to a surface that's going to have a little cut in the ground, and she's run well enough on those types of surfaces before. She's run well at Churchill Downs, and I think at a much better price than those other two are going to be. I'm going to look at Harmonize to try to hook her up in some of these spots. By no means is this a situation where I won't be using Roca Rojo and Miss Temple City in a very high level, but at the same time, I am going to try to hook up Harmonize in this spot with trusty Jose Ortiz, first time Junior Alvarado, who's been on Harmonize a majority of her career.
We already talked about the Mott Barn heating up. Harmonize filly I've always liked, so I can get behind you from my perspective using her at least at the saver level. JK, not sure if you could do anything about it or not, but if you have another option for internet, you were coming in and out a little bit there. If you have a way of switching over seamlessly, give it a try. If not, we will just power through and we'll make it happen. So don't worry about it. But if you have an opportunity to do that, go for it. Meanwhile, let's talk about the Pat Day Mile. I feel like we've talked about so much of this field already just in these shows in the run-up to the Triple Crown. Of course, these are 3-year-olds as well, like the horses in the Derby, but going a flat mile at Churchill instead of the 1.25 miles. After the Louisiana Derby on this show, I tipped Local Hero as my likely selection for this race. But as sometimes happens, when you actually look at the race on paper, it doesn't always set up for the horse that you want to like. And I'm worried that that's the case for me with Local Hero. The inside, not an advantage out of the chute at Churchill. Not necessarily a huge disadvantage, but not an advantage. But it's more a question of the pace. There's just a lot of horses in here who I believe are as fast, if not faster, early than him. And I'm just not sure what kind of trip he's going to get. Which leads me to doing something I said I wasn't going to do again after the if he didn't win the Lexington. But I'm finding myself once again wanting to give No Dozing one more shot. Tell me if I'm crazy and tell me what you think of the Pat Day.
Well, I'm hopeful that the internet will calm. If it doesn't, after this little spiel, I'll drop, let you start the next race, and then we'll pick it back up. But no dozing for me as well.
What are we, just gluttons for punishment here?
Yeah, no. This is his last shot for me. He's the cutback. A lot of times what happens, almost all these horses are trying to get into a position where they can get into the Kentucky Derby, trying the 2-turn mile and 16th mile and 8th prep races, and now they're going to cut back at this 1-turn mile, and I'm hoping that this is what's going to wake him up. This is what he's been needing to do. He actually ran sneaky well in the Lexington. He had a pretty rough trip. He got checked at the beginning in the first turn, lost about 2 lengths, then he got shuffled at the 3/8 pole.
Yep.
And so I would like to think that he found himself on the inside on the day that the outside it feels like that's where you wanted to be. So he's got my attention. I'm going to give him one more shot. Uncontested is going to give his backers a cheap thrill because I think he'll probably be on the front end. But I think that a mile is probably still too long for that one. But we'll see. But for me, it's definitely going to be No Dozing.
Who else will appear on your picks? Or have you looked to the degree where you can sort of tell us A's and B's in this race, or at this point No Dozing is going to be a piece of it, and you'll figure out the rest later?
No, I think Bobby on Fleek is interesting. I wish I know that they think a lot about the horse. If you look through his PPs, the only time he lost was to Syndergaard, and that's definitely not something that he should be ashamed about. Sonic Mule, we were against him. I think both of us were in the Tampa Bay Derby, but that's because Todd said after the swell they're going to keep this horse around 1 turn. Obviously, they're back to 1 turn. So I think Sonic Mule is one that I would probably use into some spots. The other Calumet horse, Wild Shot, who, it's funny in these. It's like a reverse handicap. A lot of this race is. It's like all the reasons you were off of them in their previous starts because they didn't want to go that far. It changes. Like now they're in these spots where they're running shorter. So Wild Shot's another one that I would give a little bit of a chance to.
The negative can become a positive in that sense. Where are you with Local Hero, just out of curiosity?
It's one of those positions where it feels like his hand's going to be forced. He's either going to have to go, and he's going to end up going too fast, or he's going to have to take back, and he's going to be rank and eat dirt. And either one of those don't feel like they're going to work out well for him. So, unfortunately, I can't get behind Local Hero in this spot with that draw.
Yeah, that is a situation where if he's in the 14 or whatever, 13, I'm probably a little bit more interested. All right, I think we got the audio situation under control. So let's just go right ahead to the American turf. We've talked about a couple of Bill Mott horses already. I think you tipped your hand on this one yesterday, so I might be stealing your thunder when I say that my initial look at the race points to Good Samaritan coming off that sort of rough trip and nice finish that he showed in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile Turf. But, of course, there's a lot of ways you can go in here. What are you thinking in terms of race 9 at Churchill on Saturday, the Grade 2 American Turf?
Yeah, this horse ran huge at Santa Anita. Obviously, I would like for the horse to have had a start prior to this. But Lockhart is going to take money, and Oscar Performance obviously is going to take money. His performance last time was extremely lackluster, and I'm not really sure that was a performance that gives me any confidence on him kind of improving from 2 to 3. Big Score was brilliant in the Transylvania. I thought he ran really well. And he's back out here for Tim Yakteen with Javier Castellano. But for me, I'm going to go with Good Samaritan. I think the price will stay fair with all those other horses in here being drawn outside and coming off of this long break. I didn't know that I was going to be trading in the silver wig for a pair of glasses for Bill Mott supporters, but I think this horse is going to run really well.
I have said that if there was a Bill Mott T-shirt, I would wear it. Now I got the Bill Mott and Miss Temple City. I one on Saturday, one on Friday, one on Saturday this week. Here's the thing about Oscar Performance. I wanted to be super duper against him. And this is another one of those things where a seemingly small thing in your handicapping can become a major factor. And I'm referring to the L with the black circle in the PPs, indicating that Oscar Performance will be first-time Lasix. Does that open you up to the possibility of just drawing a line through that Transylvania and evaluating this horse off his previous form instead of his current form?
So are they saying that he bled in the Transylvania?
I think they're saying that by adding Lasix. I have not heard. I guarantee, or virtually guarantee, if you read all the fine coverage on DRF.com right now from our crack team of reporters, this issue will be addressed. I haven't had time to do that level of research yet at 11:35 on Thursday of Derby Week. I certainly will have done it by Saturday, but I mean, I believe that the implication is that he bled.
Here's my thing. And God bless him if he bled, and I'm glad they're giving him Lasix so he doesn't bleed again. If you go back to November 4th at San Anito Park, I have no problem saying that Good Samaritan ran a better race that day.
Yeah.
And with that being said, like I have no problem taking Good Samaritan at a bigger price than Oscar Performance, whose comeback race was not very good. And I will forgive him, obviously, if it was if it was a pulmonary issue, but for me, it's Good Samaritan. And I actually was lucky enough to hang out with the guys from WinStar one of the mornings, and they said the horse is doing amazing. And they also confirmed to me that the other horse, the one that we talked about on this show, with the Japanese name, I'm going to forget now. Remember I'm talking about Yoshida?
I know the horse you mean. It was a 3-year-old colt, very impressive on the turf. I do not know the horse's name. We will. Who is the trainer? I'll look it up right now.
It's I think it's Mod again.
Okay, I'll dig for that while you finish.
Anyways, they said that one could even be better than this one. So
oh wow, that's
keep an eye out for that one to show back up. But no, I think Good Samaritan for me, especially considering the circumstances.
Yeah, that makes sense. We already talked about the 10th race. If folks are making notes along with us as we go, JK liked Limousine Liberal. I was going to try to get out with Masochistic. And that brings us to race 11, the Grade 1 Turf Classic. And I'll let you do it. I stole Good Samaritan from you. I had a feeling you were going to pick him. I'll let you go first in this race.
Should I just pick who I think is going to run second because it's like kind of a foregone conclusion? Like would that make this a more exciting version of the podcast if I just don't even say the winner's name? I just skip right over it and just say who I think is going to run second.
Now there are people listening to this show for the first time, JK, so we should probably explain what I'll let you tell the story and then maybe we're going to put this story to bed forever. So you can tell the story one last time, you make your pick in this race, and then we're going to put a moratorium on telling it forever.
No, I'm not going to tell the story. I'm just going to say I love this horse, the Darrow, and I love watching him run. How cool is it that he won the American Turf 2 years ago, won the Woodford Reserve Classic last year, and is going to win it again this year. Excited about Julian having another shot on him. I think he got to learn a little bit about him. He tried to dive him down inside. And that allowance race that was a glorified allowance race. I mean, that was a pretty nice race. It could have been a grade 2 or grade 3. So for me, it's the Darrow. Anytime he's running, I'm going to be on board. But I actually do believe that the horse has a pretty legitimate chance. One horse that I would not ignore, two horses actually that I would not ignore is World Approval, who ran second to Darrow in this race last year. and then Bala Bali, who it seems like Richard Mandela's kind of got this horse going in the right direction. This is the first time he's put him on an airplane to run outside of California. He gets Javier Castellano for the second time, and I know they think a lot about this horse, so he's another one that I would keep an eye on. And then one negative, a horse that I've liked in the past, I've picked a couple of times on this show, is Beach Patrol. In that race at Gulfstream, the horse got out really bad, got disqualified, and hasn't been back since February. Makes me think, I don't know, I have no information, just makes me think there might have been an issue there. And so I'm going to give him a race before I get back on that bandwagon.
You covered that very thoroughly. I was going to ask you about Beach Patrol, our old friend, if you hadn't said that, and that makes sense. I was thinking of him if it appeared the turf was favoring to speed or some such. Muggs Handicapping Labrador very upset with me for picking against Beach Patrol.
You think it's Chad? I think that's probably Chad.
I think
why we didn't pick his horse.
I don't want to be off his Christmas card list. Let's put it that way. But I think I was originally thinking if the turf was being kind to speed with moisture, maybe a horse I would press up a little bit more. I'll probably still use him as a B along with those others you mentioned. For me, no surprise, Divisadero as well. We've talked about this horse. We've seen it year after year. He doesn't do his best work at Gulfstream, but he seems to get real fit there and then ship elsewhere where he does extremely well.
And Pete, one more thing to the listeners to look at while you have this page of your PPs open. Look at the number 4 Conquest Panthera and look at that dam. And yesterday we talked about a horse that Craig and I both picked that was Maniacal.
Yes.
Who's going to be trying the turf for the first time. This horse is a full to Maniacal. And just to kind of go back a little bit, this is the reason we feel like that horse is going to excel when they get on the turf because of what the full brother's doing.
Absolutely, and ran a representative race, not the best race, but a representative race anyway, with a little bit of cut in the ground too. That was something that had given me a little bit of pause looking at Maniacal, how a horse who'd only run on dirt would handle the off-going. I'm becoming convinced, but I'm getting very concerned that price is going to be a little bit less than 12-1 on the morning line for Maniacal in the race tomorrow. We'll have to see. Definitely one who's going to be on my tickets. Since you brought up Conquest Panthera, any shot here for you? I mean, has some decent looking form.
I mean, yeah, a shot.
C-level contender. I can tell from the sighing and the hemming and hawing that he's not an A or a B, but maybe like if you were going down to the C level in multi, one you might use.
No, you know, to be honest with you, I think that he wouldn't even be a C-level horse for me. I think that if he wins, I get beat. However, I would use him in like, you know, he would be a contender I could potentially use like in an exacta saver situation. But I think in the multi-race plays, especially on Derby Day, there's so many possibilities to make C's and B's. It can get your ticket will get really, really expensive, and your A ticket you won't be leveraged nearly enough. And I try to avoid doing that.
I think that's a fair point. Just try to be right. All right, we are going to roll through this Kentucky Derby field, horse by horse. I just want to get your thoughts. Just sort of like a Rorschach test. Look quickly at the blob on the page and tell me what you think it looks like. And then maybe we'll sum up with some more wagering thoughts. I may pause you a bit here for some of the horses we had questions about as well.
That's fine. We got 19 minutes, so we can just go ahead and toss out Fast and Accurate. I'm just kidding. No, I actually think he might hit board, but all right. You start.
I'll begin. Looking at Lee, this is a horse who you and I have both expressed some cynicism about, who there seems to be a little bit of market idea that he could at least run on in underneath. I know you're not going to use him horizontally. Are you going to think about, if you were playing supers, would you think about using him at least on the bottom?
No, not with the post. Not with the post. I would have faded him either way, but with the post, he's definitely not one that I would be using at all.
Jay Privman made the point last night on the handicapping session we did, though, that if there was one horse that wouldn't be as bothered by the post, it might be him, since he dropped so far back out of it anyway. I thought that was just a cool observation from Jay. You can find a replay of that handicapping session, drf.com/YouTube. Doing another one tonight, 7 Eastern, with Andy Beyer and Mike Watchmaker. Look for the marquee on drf.com if you want to sign up and join me, Andy, and Mike. That should be a lot of fun. Number 2, Thunder Snow. This is another one where Jay made a couple of really good points, I thought, in the show last night, pointing out I had mentioned the idea that it seemed like the connections were wavering He pointed me to his excellent reporting on the topic, which said it wasn't a case of wavering, it was a case of them wanting to make the announcement and not having somebody else make the announcement, so that he was really meant to come here the whole time. But then both Jay and Craig did point out that as visually impressive as I thought the UAE Derby was, the idea that Master Plan was so close maybe does call into question the form of that race. I don't know. He's still a horse I am considering as a secondary or tertiary use in multi-race wagers. Where are you with Thundersnow?
Oh, I wanted to pick him. I wanted him to be my horse, but the post is just no good for a horse that was 4 wide, and it made on in the Dubai World Cup. I mean, I'm not the Dubai World Cup, but the UAE Derby. Didn't get a lot of dirt in his face. He's going to eat dirt in this race, and I'm not crazy about him doing that for the first time. At least at this degree. I'm not saying he's never had dirt in his face, but to this degree. And so he'll be one I'll use defensively, because I don't want to have a good opinion that wins at 20-1 and I don't have it. But I don't see how he can win from that spot. But I will use him underneath.
You said something positive about Fast and Accurate before. Craig Milkowski was lamenting that there wasn't a market where you could bet on who was going to finish last. What's your positive case on Fast and Accurate? Or is it simply in Maker you trust to maybe run fourth?
He will not run last. Mike Maker's too good of a trainer. His horses are way too fit, and he won't run last. But I just don't think he's good enough. And I try to spin a way for him to be good enough. If he were to run fourth, I wouldn't be shocked. But I also I'm fine not cashing a ticket where he runs fourth, just because of the cost and the actual value that he presents. So I'm gonna fade him here. And we'll see him winning 1.5-mile turf races at some point in his life.
Blinkers off for Untrapped, a horse who I just have some pretty serious questions after reviewing the tape about his ability to get the distance. Will he be anywhere for you?
No, I think he wants to run shorter. If I owned Untrapped, I would be running him in the Derby too, and me and all my friends would have those damn Untrapped buttons on. So I'm not knocking him. I just don't. He's not for me in this spot.
We've talked a little bit about Always Dreaming, the horse with the Brooklyn connection, which you gotta love. We've talked about the Pletcher stat. This was your first pick in our Derby draft. Is he still your first pick?
This horse is the biggest question mark for me. I heard a really compelling argument. One of the funnest things about hanging out at the racetrack is just listening to people talk. You hear a lot of stupid stuff, but then you also hear some pretty smart stuff. And one of the things I heard this morning is, yes, he's on the muscle. Yes, he's pulling in gallops. When he pops from the gate and they're running 12-second intervals around the racetrack, he's going to be off the bit and he's going to be relaxed in that spot. He hasn't pulled in his races. Why would he pull now? I mean, in Gulfstream went like 25 and like 116.5 or whatever it was, and he wasn't pulling then. So why would he pull going, in a race that's 47 to the half? And that's actually a pretty good point. He'll be forwardly placed. I wish he was drawn a little bit further outside. He's probably been re-upgraded. He was an A, then he was a B, now he's an A again. I think that he'll end up being an A when they start playing my old Kentucky home.
I think he's an A for me, but I don't think he's an A+, just because of some of the surrounding questions. We'll get to our summing up of thoughts in a few minutes. We're actually doing a good job breezing through here. Do we need to spend much time on State of Honor? Certainly a possibility to be the early leader in this race. Do you see a world in which he hangs around late?
I don't, but I will tell you this. Just if you have your notes open, take a formulator note. This horse is massive. Saw him this morning when Classic Empire and him came out. I mean, he's like Dortmund big. I mean, he's
really
huge. So, I think the idea about Dortmund is he was always going to be really good at one turn as a big horse. Keep an eye on this horse kind of cutting back in distance as he goes on. I don't think Saturday will be his day.
Perfect thing for a horse note in Formulator for Formulator users that will appear at the bottom of the PP, and you'll see it every time. So, it doesn't allow for the possibility of you forgetting about this, which, of course, happens so often when you're just hearing things anecdotally. Formulator gives you a chance to encode that right in the PPs. Number 7, Gervin, we talked about on the show last night. There's been the drama, the shoe drama covered so well by Jay Privman in the pages of the paper. I'm just not there's just the vibes around this horse are just not great, to put it mildly. And the paper isn't that great either when it comes to looking at the speed figures, despite the impressive running lines in the Grade 2 races. Am I giving him short shrift, or are you with me that Gervin will not be gracing my tickets?
No, he won't be gracing yours or mine. I didn't want him before the foot situation. Ironically enough, I think that his workout partner, April 29th at Keeneland, the name of his workout partner kind of sums it all up to me. He worked with a horse named Hot Foot. So I will.
You'll leave
I
it
will
at
be
that.
treating. I will be. I'll leave it there, and he won't be on a ticket for me. Unfortunately, my love for Mike Smith will have to be expressed elsewhere on the Kentucky Derby betting card.
You still have plenty of love for Mike, even if you don't bet his horse in the Derby. That's okay. Number 8 is Hence. Has the look of one of the potential wise guy horses, as we've said numerous times coming into this, coming out of that Sunland Derby score. We haven't talked about him too much recently. How much do you like this? I'm assuming he's going to be at least a B for you. How high up on tickets, and how much do you really like him?
At least a B. He's been working well. He's been galloping well. Steve Asmussen can get a horse ready for these types of spots. He proved me wrong with a horse last year that I didn't think was very good in Gun Runner. I'll definitely be using, but no, I don't think he's going to quite make it to an A for me, and that's strictly based on the form of that Sunland Derby. I know that it seems like it's really good, but I'm not 100% sure how good it really was.
You say that. I mean, E-Rap obviously comes back and wins the Bluegrass. Conquest Mo Money runs arguably the best race in the, or at least as good as the winner in the Arkansas Derby. What are you seeing in that form to question it based on those two high-profile successes?
Well, my A-plus pick is gonna be a little contradictory to what I'm saying. I'm not sure how good of a race that the Bluegrass actually was, and I'm not 100% sure how good the Arkansas Derby was.
Gotcha.
Which kind of leads me to some answers that I'll have to give.
Put a pin in it. We'll get there in a second. We also had a question come in, specific question about somebody who was also reading the book Wild Ride and getting very into Calumet history, and they asked a question about how is it okay in your horse playing to let your attraction to a great old farm like Calumet influence the picks you make in a race like the Kentucky Derby. What do you say to that?
Yeah, no, I don't think I would do that. I think that's probably a recipe for disaster. However, if you're going to be betting $100 on the day and you want to bet $10 on Hintz because he's Calumet, good for you. Go for it. I wouldn't make any serious attacks based on your affinity for connections or affinity for a story. But it's a fun story when you're sitting around the house watching the Kentucky Derby, and you can tell people sitting around your table or at your house that horse is owned by one of the most famous farms of all time who had a lot of corruption and all these crazy situations, and you can tell the story, and it's a fun story to tell. But I wouldn't be placing wagers based on that.
The more serious you are, probably the less you want to do that. The more you're out to have fun, becomes more of a why not situation. Number 9, E-Rap. I just can't get over the tape of the Bluegrass. It just didn't look like a horse that's going to improve and or win the Derby. Maybe I'm being foolish. Redham and O'Neill, obviously, and Mario have had such great success in this race. But E-Rap just isn't for me. What about you, JK?
I didn't know he was a half to Speightstown, which is kind of cool. No, I mean, I'm going to use him underneath just because of I've said it a bunch of times, how much I love Doug O'Neill and what he can do in these types of spots. If you look at E-Rap's last 2 races, they're mile works. You look at Nyquist, and I believe I'll have another did the same thing. He knows how to get a horse ready for this race. He trains him different than other people do, and I would expect that this horse will be at least finishing. I don't think he's good enough to win, but he's definitely the type of horse that can run 3rd or 4th and have people. He'll be that horse where everyone says, "Oh, I would have had the try, but I didn't have that Doug O'Neill horse."
We've had a bunch of questions about Gunnevara and pace setups specifically for Gunnevara. Somebody was asking about the relative setups in the Fountain of Youth and the Florida Derby, and if that might have explained that he had a favorable setup in the Fountain of Youth, unfavorable in the Derby, but maybe today's would be more like the Fountain of Youth. Are you buying Gunnevara as a serious Kentucky Derby contender?
I am not. I'm not. I won't use him at all. In any situation. There is an argument, and it's an accurate argument that he had a very unadvantageous setup last time, and that's true. Disadvantageous, excuse me. Setup last time. That's true. He had no shot in that race. I want my Kentucky Derby horse to be able to overcome some adversity, and I'm not sure he's good enough to do that. They've said a bunch. He's not much to look at. The workout at Churchill didn't get anybody going, and so for me, there's no reason to kind of jump back on board now. I'm gonna pass on Guevara.
Battle of Midway is number 11, another potential pace factor, I suppose, coming out of a race that I don't think either of us think very much of. You going to do anything with him?
He's the horse that on the back of my napkin or the back of my PPs when I'm like writing up my superfecta, and I get to like the horses I'm using in fourth, and I'm like, damn, whatever. I'll just throw the 11 into what's an extra $8. Like that's the only way I'm using him. I'm making a rule that I'm not using horses out of the Santa Anita Derby, and he's out of that race. So he definitely ran the best race, him and Royal Mo, in my opinion, in that situation, being close to that fast pace. But I don't want him moving forward.
We had a question about Sonneteer having such a good closing 3/8 mile time in one of the prep races. I think it was in probably last time in the Arkansas Derby. I mean, this is a horse for me. I'm probably not going to get involved in verticals. I just don't know that I have a strong enough opinion to deal with the dollar minimum. But if you put a gun to my head and said, draw up some verticals for me, I think one of the things I might do, I'm going to put, lock in my A-pluses up top and mix in this guy third and fourth. I think that'd be how I would play it. And if I were crazy enough to take on the Super High Five, fifth as well. I like this horse to come running late for a little piece. I'm not super excited about it where I think that's how I'm going to play the race. But I get it. I get it, despite his being a maiden. Am I just dreaming here?
No, I'm with you. Like I said, a lot of these opinions are going to come off like kind of contradictory, right? Because I don't think the Arkansas Derby was that good of a race. However, I think he kind of ran okay. He's going to be running on late. I don't think that the connections or the rider are going to try to like win the race. I feel like Kent's going to just take back, save ground, make one run, and while the other mile and an eighth to mile horses are stopping, this horse is going to kind of keep going, and you just kind of get a piece. I don't think the horse could win, but I also think that this horse could be Commanding Curve, who runs second because he just picked up the pieces when the other ones were slowing down.
Sort of a good point that people don't talk about, especially in a race that has a projected fast pace. There's a huge difference between horses who the better horses could very well finish much farther back because they're trying to win the race, like JK said, getting into the teeth of a hot pace, then downlining, as Paul Matisse might say, and just having nothing left, dropping back through the field, whereas a horse who's more ridden for a placing can be passing them late. Doesn't mean that Sonneteer is better than all those horses, but they don't. You don't have to say, "Hey, was my horse better?" when it comes time to cash your pari-mutuel tickets. J Boy's Echo. We've talked a lot about the setup and being on the best part of the track. Two back. Romans. He'll get this race at some point. I don't know it's going to be this year.
No, it wasn't. It was supposed to be this year. Not this time, but unfortunately it's not. So I know no J Boy's Echo for me. I do believe in Romans in this race on this racetrack, but not with this horse.
Poor JK with his 100-1 bets on two of the better looking horses that were foaled that year, both Mastery and Not This Time. Doesn't get one to the starting gate, but you had good value on both of them, in my opinion. Number 14, Classic Empire. I was pretty sure he was going to be a favorite until a horse that we're going to get to in a minute got all this attention seemingly from every handicapper and horse player in the world, but he's going to be among the favorites. How are you going to use him?
Jeez. I don't know. I think I'm going to just toss him just for some real value injections.
Even in the Super?
Yeah. Well, because he's going to run. People used to say this to me. I used to get very annoyed because it doesn't make any sense. He's going to win. He's going to run second, or he's off the board.
Yeah, there's something there.
Because it doesn't. But it's kind of an annoying statement, right? It's like you think he can win, he can run second, but he can't run third or fourth.
Well, it's almost like if the real horse shows up, if he takes the big step forward that he might, based on the last race, he's gonna by just dint of his talent, he'd probably win the race. I might almost go farther and play him to win or to run out. Because
go ahead. Here's my logic with him, right? The Holy Bull, he was not cranked, right? We all knew that. They said we knew it. They weren't going to crank him for that. So they took it easy on him leading up to February 4th. And then after that, he had the issues. They had to take it easy with him on him then. And then he finally runs a race, and I just think it's going to be too much too soon, and it's going to catch up to him when they're at the 3/8 pole.
I think that's a totally fair assessment. I'm sticking by the winner run out idea with him. I'm calling it audible here. We've only technically got 5 minutes left, but let's not rush through this, JK. I think folks will bear with us for an extra 5 minutes if we go 5 over. So let's not stress too much. We really have some interesting horses coming up. McCracken, we talked about a lot the other day, and how he has sort of won us both over with how he's looked in the morning. You love, or at least I love, the fact that in Ian Wilkes this horse is in hands that you can count on him improving, having more left in the tank on Derby Day. Jay Privman said it on the handicapping session last night. I've seen this movie before, referring to the Karl Navska runners who didn't necessarily show their best in the bluegrass and stepped up. At the current prices in the UK, he is my top pick. I still think I may stick with my original Derby team selection when push comes to shove here. But I'll ask you, you were talking bad about the form of the bluegrass, and yet you implied that you like McCracken. How much do you like McCracken, and how do you excuse the last race?
Because I don't think it was the intentions of Ian Wilkes for him to run his best race in that last race. And the way he's been moving out of that race suggests that he's only improving. The workout report, I would imagine, from DRF Clocker report is going to be pretty strong when it's released on McCracken and what he's been doing at Churchill Downs since that race. And, he just feels like the type that's going to keep running. He feels like type that doesn't, I think I heard Bick say he's going to be like 60. He thinks he might be like 16th early. And then I don't even know who he had on. He had a guest on. Maybe it was Gary Young, the clocker from California. He said, no, I think he actually might sit like 10th. And I think he's going to get the kind of Animal Kingdom trip from the 15 where he's just going to kind of be in the middle of the pack, in the clear, and he's just going to keep running. And his gallop out the other day suggests that that's the case. This is the one when people are texting me asking who do I like in the Derby, the random friend who knows you like horse racing. This is the one I'm giving him. I think that this is going to be my big key situation. He'll be the one that I'll play a Paradise Woods McCracken or a Miss Sky Warrior McCracken double in the Oaks Derby double situation, but he's going to probably be my top pick.
I love it, and I'm with you. A+ for me. Taproot has been attracting a lot of nice comments in terms of the appearance he's been making in the morning. I know you're not a clocker, JK, though you apparently play one on social media from some of the pictures I've seen. I'm not sure if those have been circulated widely, but I'm going to make sure to do that just to take the starch out of you a little bit. Have you seen Taproot in the flesh? Where do you stand with him overall?
Oh, it doesn't matter if I've seen him in the flesh. I don't know what I'm looking at. He's got 4 legs, so that's important.
You say this, and yet you've made some astute comments on recent works by both American Freedom and McCracken. I think all that time you've been spending with Big John Nichols, it's rubbing off a little bit.
Well, a lot of the times I just repeat what I hear. But
oh, is that your secret?
The American Freedom one, that you watch that tape, that was impressive. He did that. You can just tell. I know I like more Spirit, and he just blew away that horse. So, I'm going to use Taproot probably underneath. I joked about that, or I was semi-serious about the 8-horse Super Box. I think he would probably make the cut in there just because he feels like the type that could run, 3rd or 4th. I don't think he can win. I don't think he'll run 2nd, but I do think that he could. If you toss the Keeneland race and just say that something weird happened, he's got numbers that could suggest that he could run okay. I know we talked about how he seems like one that can kind of keep running. So I'll use him a little bit underneath. But I'm not passionate about it by any means. I'm
upset with you, man. You say joked about the 8-horse Superbox. That was going to be my last question. So you better get your numbers together and who's in your 8-horse Superbox. But we'll go through the rest of the field before we go there. My other A+ is my friend Irish War Cry. I am hoping a lot of people, well, I shouldn't say that. There's been a lot of market I don't know about market sports. There's been a lot of positive chatter about this horse in the days leading up to the race. I've also heard some very sharp handicappers question whether or not he's going to be able to get the trip that he's gotten that's proved to be so effective, the sort of stalking and pouncing in this race, because this pace is going to be so much faster. In my imagination of how Irish Warcry is going to win the race, he's going to run differently than he has in the past, and he is going to get more of a upper quartile of the field trip and still be able to manage some finish. That's how I think this horse can win. I'm nervous about what price he's going to be in terms of potentially getting overbet. Do you share the love? We've agreed throughout the field. Are we going to continue to agree on Irish Warcry, JK?
When you do the start at the bottom of the PPs and work your way up thing, the Marylander, he ran really well. Down on the inside at Laurel, which is not where you really want to be. Then he got the easy pace, and then when he won the Holy Bull, then he had the clunker in the Fountain of Youth, and then he had the easy trip in the Wood Memorial. So the 2 times he's won, and he's won big with big numbers, he's had easy trips. I just can't get behind a horse that his best running comes when he has an easy trip, because he's not going to have one in this race. I mean, he's going to at least go 4 wide on both turns, right? I mean, 3 wide at the best case scenario from that position.
There's a lot of days at Churchill Downs. A lot of days at Churchill Downs where you can be wide around the turn, and it's not as deleterious to your chances as it is at a lot of places. Now, we don't know that for sure Derby Day, but I mean, we've seen horses. There's plenty of days at Churchill where ground loss is not the death knell that it is at some racetracks. That definitely factors into my appreciation of Irish Warcry's chances. What's your bottom line on the horse? Are you tossing him? Is he a B? Is he a weak A? Where do you go?
Well, a couple of thoughts. First, he's a B, and I'm going to use him. The second thought is that I need you to get on the Jockey Club website and reserve the horse name Deleterious.
Deleterious. That would be a good. Yeah, that is a good horse name.
Yeah, so you do that, and we'll get a horse. We'll do it.
I like it. When we put together the DRF Players Podcast Racing Partnership, the first horse will be Deleterious, and then we'll go for May You Win Your Photos All Run Together or something for the next one. All right, let's talk about Gormley. You've already sort of said what you think about the Santa Anita Derby. I agree with you. This is a horse that I've put on my list of horses who could be super overbet because of the success Espinosa's had in the race. We've seen other years, a lot of crowd money coming to jockeys. John Sheriff's obviously the Zenyatta connection. You can see the features on NBC now, and I just feel money coming to this horse in an undue way. I'm going to try to beat pretty much everywhere, I think. You, JK?
0 for me.
I don't know that you need to expand on it even. I mean, let's go to number 19, Practical Joke. We talked about this horse at great length with sort of both of us buying into the general theory that shorter will be better. Really game horse, really cool horse. Can't blame him for taking a shot. I'm not going to use him anywhere. Will you use him to hang around? Inverts?
I think I'm gonna like prevent myself from like that gross feeling of almost hitting the super, but he ran third and I didn't have him.
Yeah, I get that. He's going to be in the hunt.
Yeah, it's not I like him or I think he can get a mile and a quarter. I don't like him. I don't think he can get a mile and a quarter. I think he's going to ultimately be a horse that's going to excel at shorter distances. But I'm also not prepared to walk out of Churchill Downs with him being the reason I didn't hit the super. There's other horses I can stomach that. He's not one that I can stomach.
You're right. You actually use him. You just talked me into it for the verticals. If I make that bet with McCracken and Irish Warcry in the top 2, contenders in the other spot of the top 2, and then Sonneteer third, fourth, and fifth, you're right. Yeah, in the contenders spots underneath, Practical Joke has to be in there. He is going to be in the race at the pace call. So that is enough, probably alone, to toss him in there. Number 20 is Patch. You've commented on his having one eye, another story that's going to get a lot of attention. Another Calumet runner. I don't know what to do with him in terms of verticals. I suppose I might lean towards leaving him in, but not with any enthusiasm, just in those spots where I'm spreading. Anything exciting on Patch?
No, nowhere. Our friend Mike Hogan made a funny Twitter joke, though. I don't know if you saw it.
No, what did he say?
He said the good thing about Patch drawing the 20 is he might not know he's running against 19 other horses.
That's pretty funny. A clever one-eyed joke for Patch. I don't think we need to spend any time on the AEs unless you have anything.
Royal Mo's the only one I would use defensively in fourth if he got in, but I don't want to, and I probably will. Hopefully, I'll have enough mint juleps and lilies that I'll forget that I even said that. I won't do it, but in a sober state, I might throw him in the fourth spot.
Did you say lilies? What's a lily?
Oh, it's embarrassing. I shouldn't even say it.
That's my job to pick up when you say embarrassing
things. It's a drink they have
things.
on Fridays. It's like a red sugar drink, pretty much.
Oh, that sounds horrendous.
You would hate it.
Don't put that anywhere near me.
That I had one.
Just do the old, what's it, I'm going to get his first name wrong now, Henry Watterson joke about the mint julep, plucking the mint and carefully putting the drink together and cracking the ice and getting the perfect glass to the perfect temperature and then throw all that stuff away and drink the bourbon. That's probably how I would approach my drinking on Kentucky Derby Day. Though a properly made mint julep, not easy to get, but a properly made mint julep is a fantastic drink. Throw that in there. Couple little bits of housekeeping, and then we'll get out of here. Yoshida was the name of the Mott China Horse Club runner that Windstar is also involved in, that JK was mentioning before. I'm going to impromptu, if you stuck with us for this whole podcast, we're going to do a contest just for you. Send us in your Cold Oaks Derby double. So one horse for the Oaks, one horse for the Derby. Email it to podcast@drf.com. We'll do a draw. I would think there'll be more than one winner, and then we will do a drawing amongst those winners, and that person will get a $95 round one entry for the World Championship of Handicapping. That sound like a cool contest to you, JK?
That's fun. It's too bad I'm ineligible. So
yeah, you are not eligible for this one. You win enough. But yeah, so podcast@drf.com, Oaks winner, Derby winner, and then time for the final question. I gave you plenty of warning, so I hope you're ready. Your 8-horse super box for the 2017 Kentucky Derby.
All right, here it goes. All right, we're going to go Thunder Snow. The 2-horse Thunder Snow. 5-horse Always Dreaming. 8-horse Hints. The 12-horse Sonneteer. The 15 McCracken. 16 Taproot. 17 Irish Warcry. And 19 Practical Joke.
All right, I like it. What does that cost? We determined the other day.
1680. I forgot now. 1600 and something.
All right, for me, the main bets are probably going to be the double win variety if the prices come right with 15 McCracken and 17 Irish Warcry. Failing that, in addition to that, going to look at multis, pressing those two. Hopefully good things will happen for us. Hopefully good things will happen for you. That's this year's Derby podcast. Thank you all for sticking with us. Thanks, Jonathan Kinchin. Thanks, everybody in the first place for listening and downloading and sharing these shows. We have a nice little community, lots of cool questions coming in. Feel free to hit us up on Twitter if you have some more. I'm at Looms Boldly, JK at UT Big Hair. We will be back to recap all of the excitement on Tuesday. May you win all your Kentucky Derby photos.